2 weeks ago, I saw this video made by Answer in Progress, a creator I really respect.
In this video, we use an AI to figure out what's so special about Japanese web design.
They go into great detail to investigate why Japanese internet looks like this, while Western internet looks like this. I'm not going to summarize what they found. It's actually very interesting and very well researched. You should go and watch that video for yourself, and then come back here, because I think they missed something very big.
However, given what I've found, I'm just not convinced that culture is the primary cause of Japan's unique web design.
Well, let me convince you, Sabrina, because I think there are deep-rooted cultural reasons as to why modern websites in Japan and other East Asian countries look like this. Dense, cluttered, and information overload. I actually left a comment in the video briefly explaining why I think there is a whole cultural argument that they missed. And yes, I even upvoted the comment myself so that it will get more exposure, but no one saw it. So I'm making a video about it.
We all see the world through cultural glasses.
We're a species addicted to culture.
The lens through which your brain sees the world shapes your reality.
It shapes our brains. It shapes how we think of the world, what we pay attention to, and how we perceive things.
A lot of what I will be talking about falls into the burgeoning field of cultural psychology, paved by well-respected academics such as Dr. Joseph Henrich and Dr. Richard Nisbett, who have been researching Eastern versus Western cultures for a really long time. Let's begin by defining what culture is. Culture can be generally defined as the characteristics, values, knowledge, and lifestyles commonly found within a group of people or a place. In this video, I refer to East Asian culture as culture from countries like Japan, Korea, and China, where I was born. Western culture is generally defined as culture that stems from northwestern European countries, such as the UK and Germany, and other societies that branched out from these countries, such as the US, Canada, and Australia. In the video made by Answer in Progress, they set out to investigate a theory first brought out by this blog in 2013 about how Japanese internet web designs are just more cluttered and dense than the rest of the world. And that's not because some famous Japanese designer dictated that all the websites should look like this. There are many reasons why the modern Japanese internet look like this and why the population continued to accept this design as is.
So it seems like it wasn't language or culture that caused Japan's web design to fracture off from the rest of the world. Instead, it's that their websites never adopted the practices for mobile-friendly web design.
As they argue in the video, one of the main reasons is that Japanese designers did not feel the need to adopt a mobile-friendly design to accommodate the smartphone revolution, because most people in Japan browse websites on their computers rather than their phones. This is still quite true for the older Japanese population today. But that's Japan. That's not true for South Korea. And that's not true for China, where the iPhones and the Androids dominated the smartphone market in the 2010s. In 2013, 73% of South Korean adults owned a smartphone, compared to 25% of Japanese adults and 47% of Chinese adults. By the way, South Korea's 73% is much higher than that of United States or Canada, which were 56% at the time. This is what the countries look like in terms of ranking by smartphone penetration rate. In 2013, Androids dominated the South Korean market, and this is what their Android looked like. The design for browsing internet is really not that different from that of an iPhone, which, according to Answer in Progress, supposedly changed Western website designs. So according to the argument made by Answer in Progress, South Korean internet should look similar to that of North America because we adopted similar technology around the same time. But a lot of Korean and Chinese websites look like this, similar to that of Japan. Some of the most visited websites in South Korea today still look like this. Why? It's culture.
Cultures help us see and make sense of the world around us.
Cultural evolution has been central in driving our species' genetic evolution.
The values behind culture.
And all of these can potentially influence our psychology and give rise to cultural psychological differences among populations.
There is something really fundamental you need to understand about Easterners versus Westerners. We think differently. not just in terms of content or language, but in terms of how our brains process information. This is heavily documented in cultural psychology. Westerners tend to be analytic thinkers, meaning they like to focus on individual objects, specific details, and attributes about these single objects. I'll give you an example in a bit. On the other hand, Easterners tend to be holistic thinkers, meaning Easterners like to see the picture in its whole. They like to focus on the relationships between objects rather than the individual objects themselves. So for example, if you ask an analytic thinker and a holistic thinker to describe a dining table, an analytic thinker might say, it's made out of wood and it has 4 legs. Whereas a holistic thinker might say, it's a place where people sit together and eat. Now, of course, you can have a combination of those thinking styles, but culturally speaking, East Asians tend to see the picture in its larger context, whereas North Americans tend to see the individual components that make up that picture. Okay, so what does this have to do with the internet?
Asians are picking up much more about both the physical environment and the social environment than Westerners are. They just see a tremendous amount more. The Japanese pick up 60% more information about the context and twice as much information about relationships.
This difference in how we process information actually makes a huge difference in how information is presented in these two different cultures.
The lens through which your brain sees the world shapes your reality.
A group of researchers conducted a study that examined how people from different cultures present information to others. They found that there was a clear distinction between Eastern and Western culture in what is considered the optimal amount of information presented. Visual cultural products of East Asia are information rich because the holistic way of thinking allows people to see all information as equally important and absorb all the information in the whole context. In contrast, the North American analytical way of thinking allows people to be more organized and focus on the core salient message. They also argue that because East Asians are constantly surrounded by information-rich products and dense physical environments, such as growing up in cities like Tokyo, being surrounded by these things further pushes East Asians to normalize constantly processing a lot of information all at once. This enables designers to cram a lot of information onto one single web page, and it leads to websites like these. They put all these articles and forums all on the homepage without breaking them up, and expect their users to easily find what they need. Westerners who access these type of websites tend to be overwhelmed by the amount of information that's presented all at once. But East Asians are actually used to this density. The same researchers also did another study on European Canadians and East Asians on how fast they can find relevant information within complex and dense websites. They found that East Asians in general were faster at finding these images in the complex and lengthy websites that they've created. This is something that's been built into their brains because of the influence of culture. And because of this slight difference in a cognitive process, it changes the way that the products they use are designed. I'll link the papers I've talked about in the description box below, so if you want to go read more on your own, you can. The biggest pet peeve I have with Western design, or just the West in general, is that there tends to be this impulse to say that just because something isn't up to our standards, it's bad. Just because we think it's bad, it's bad. And I know sometimes I think like this too, but it's such a self-centered way of thinking. How can we say that their design is bad when we don't even know the first thing about the people that these designs are serving?
We always think that the culture that fits our own personal values, that's good. The culture that doesn't fit our own personal values, that's bad. But in practice, nobody is right. Realize your own bias. How do your values affect the way you judge other people? How can you learn about other people's values and judge them according to their values instead of your own? There is no right culture, no wrong culture.
Oh, by the way, this isn't just an internet design thing. The practice of packing dense information into small spaces can be widely found in advertising. Just take a look at Japanese or Korean or Chinese ads like banner ads, movie posters, or even TV commercials. You'll notice that they cram a lot of information into small spaces or short periods of time. You see, East Asian designers can design like this because they know that their audience is capable of processing this information. And it doesn't just stop there. It's not just advertising. We can trace this pattern back to traditional and contemporary East Asian art styles. This study examined over 1,000 paintings and artworks from the Met in New York City and from Japanese art museums. They noticed that East Asian art contained busier scenes in general than Western art. Western art tends to have an object-focused style, where there is one central subject or place of attention that the viewer is drawn to. On the other hand, East Asian art tend to have context-rich environments with no specific focal point. They found that in current days, this art style in each culture still persists. This makes a lot of sense for the website design styles that we see today. Western web designs are embracing this minimalistic design trend to highlight and emphasize the most important information, the subject. And you can see this throughout the most popular website making tools. All the templates tend to keep information as concise and minimal as possible to draw your attention to a specific place. But East Asian web design is not like this at all. Information is sprawled out across the page. There tends to be no major central focal point, or at least it's very subtle compared to Western web design. But it's still very organized through context and relationships. Even though there's a lot of information all over the place, they're still very connected to each other. I hope you can see how culture plays a crucial role in art and design. And this is nothing new, but I think we've been underplaying the influence that culture can have on shaping some of our modern day technology, like the internet.
The lens through which your brain sees the world shapes your reality.
Wouldn't it be great if we could look through each other's glasses?
If you can change the lens, not only can you change the way you perceive other people's behaviors, but you can allow yourself to see the world in someone else's perspective. And if we manage to do this, we're going to manage to solve some of the biggest problem we're facing in society today, which is to make multicultural organization in society work well.
I know I covered quite a bit, so if you have questions or thoughts, let me know in the comments and we can talk about it. I actually wrote a whole paper on how culture influences how we all see shape differently, and I'm very happy to do a separate video on that as well. If you want to learn more, I've linked further resources on this topic in the description box. Also, please like and share this video because I really want Answer in Progress to watch this video and send me their thoughts. Thank you so much. In the next video, I will be talking about a cultural phenomenon that I learned about in Australia. So if you want to watch that when it comes out, make sure to click the button that spells SUBSCRIB subscribe.